If you're big, you must be always trying to get smaller. If you just had a baby, you must be trying to bounce back. Like that's where you're devoting your energy. If you're big, you can be the funny best friend, but you can't be the romantic lead. All of these rules and all of these restrictions. I've always tried to tell stories where there are women of different shapes and different sizes, sort of insisting that they too can be main characters. They can have main character energy, even if they're not a size 2.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to How She Does It, where we get to spend time with women who are setting the standard in their chosen fields. I'm Karen Finerman. You may have seen me on Fast Money on CNBC. I'm a long-term Wall Street investor, a mom of 4, and a big WNBA fan. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to listen in on our conversation, which I hope will inform, inspire, and entertain you. Unlike some of our other guests who have taken very circular paths to get where they were meant to be, for author Jennifer Weiner, it was almost a straight shot. She graduated from Princeton, became a reporter, and began working on a book. She sold it, and just like that, she was a published author and has never looked back. Over the 20-plus years since then, Jennifer has elevated her love of writing into an enviable career as a New York Times best-selling author. She's penned 17 novels, including her first, Good in Bed, and her novel In Her Shoes, which was made into a movie starring Cameron Diaz, Toni Collette, and Shirley MacLaine. She's also written short story collections, a memoir, and more, entertaining millions of readers along the way. Her latest is the New York Times bestseller, The Griffin Sisters' Greatest Hits. Her novels explore the lives of women, particularly their roles as sisters, friends, mothers, and daughters, as well as how their choices about their careers impact their lives. She puts plus-size women front and center in her stories and has battled publishers to have them reflected on her book's covers. And she's terrific company. Jennifer and I spoke about her thoughts on having her books turned into movies, the surprising thing Toni Morrison asked her after reading her work, and why you'll never see one of her characters go through a miraculous weight loss makeover. This was really a delightful conversation. Hope you enjoy. Welcome, Jennifer Weiner. I am so excited to be with you today. Thank you for making the time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, I have so much to get to, so we're just going to jump right in.
Great.
So you studied English at Princeton, and you worked as a print journalist before publishing your first novel, Good in Bed. So was fiction writing as a career always the goal for you?
Yes, that was always the dream. And like you said, I was an English major in college. I graduated in 1991 and was greeted with the harsh reality that no one really hires entry-level novelists to write a novel. I checked the classified ads very closely to make sure. And then I went to both of my parents and asked if either one of them would be interested in being a patron of the arts and supporting me for several years while I wrote my first novel. And they both told me no, so I got a job at a newspaper.
Okay, so I know you were at the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Mm-hmm.
You started writing a novel. Tell us about selling that first novel.
Okay, so let's back up. So my first newspaper job was at a very small paper in central Pennsylvania, where one of my jobs was typing the school lunch menus for 5 local school districts. So, and I had studied with Toni Morrison, which I think I've told everybody within 5 minutes of them meeting me. And nothing will knock the Toni Morrison out of you faster than having to sit there and type like chicken nuggets, tater tots, hot dog in bun. So that was my first job. And honestly, looking back, it was really the smartest thing I could have done. I was writing every day. I was learning to write on deadline. I was learning to edit my work and listen to editors and notice details and listen to dialogue and all the things that became useful when I wrote the first novel. So small newspaper for like 2.5 years, medium-sized newspaper, Lexington, Kentucky, little less than a year there. Then I get hired at the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I'm a feature writer, which I'm so happy about. No more hard news, no more numbers, no more budgets. I was very bad at all that. And then I get dumped, and this guy breaks my heart. And finally, I know what I'm going to write a novel about, which is a girl who's a lot like me, who gets dumped and has to find her way to a happy ending. So that became my first novel. And I did not tell anybody I was writing a novel because I didn't want to be a newspaper reporter who's like, I'm writing a novel, and then 10 years go by and somebody's like, hey, how was that novel you told everyone you were writing? And so just in case it didn't sell, in case nothing happened with it, I didn't tell anybody I was writing it, except my best friend and my mom. So I write this novel, and this is like before the internet. So like, I really can't Google things like how many words is a novel supposed to be. So I just kind of stopped when I felt I had a novel-sized stack of pages. And I bought a book called like A Writer's Guide to Literary Agents, and just started querying people and just hoping they hadn't died between the publication of the book and them receiving my query. Because like, you couldn't check. There wasn't an internet. And found an agent eventually. I went in, I think, a little arrogantly and was just assuming, oh, they're just going to be lining up to represent me. They were not lining up to represent me. They were lining up to tell me they didn't want to represent me. So eventually found an agent, sold the first book.
That's amazing that you were able to do that with just the guide. So in your memoir, Hungry Heart, which is a fantastic name, you wrote about the moment that you never wanted to be without money. Can you tell us about that?
So I grew up in this kind of interesting way where my dad was a doctor and my family was like very comfortably middle class until my dad left. And he decided he was done with being a husband, and he was also done with being a father. And over the years, like, he'd end up in court and the judge would be like, you have to pay your child support. And he would pay child support for like a month or 2 months or 6 months and then just stop. And so there were years of my mom like dragging him to court, hoping she would get a sympathetic judge, hoping he'd show up and wouldn't find some lawyer who would try to like get a continuance. And this went on for a very, very, very long time. And we never went hungry, but there was like a big lifestyle change between having a father who's a doctor living in the house and paying for things, and then he's gone. There's 4 kids. My mom was a teacher, which, you know, was not then and is not now the most remunerative profession. You know, and I remember things like the refrigerator would break and my mom would have to ask her mom for help, which I'm sure she was not imagining that was going to be the case when she was in her 40s or whatever. And I decided when I have kids, they're not going to have to worry. They're not going to have to worry about paying for college. They're not going to have to worry about the refrigerator breaking. They're not going to have to worry about any of the things that I was worrying about. And money was really important to me. And I was happy when I started making it.
Do you remember what was, for the first sort of real amount of money you got, maybe in advance or whatever it might be, what did you do with that?
I went to Target and bought everything I wanted. That was like my one big splurge, like name brand dog food, not the generic kind, but like the actual Purina dog food. So one big shopping spree, and then the rest of it went into a down payment for my first house and then into investments. Like, I was super duper, like, there was not going to be jewelry. There was not going to be like a Mercedes. There was not going to be a fur coat. There was going to be money in the bank, which that was what I wanted more than anything else, was just that security of knowing that I could pay for stuff.
Right, that there's a net. That's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to go back to something you said at the top. Toni Morrison.
Yes.
As you mentioned, you studied with Toni Morrison. True that she once said, there's a lot of sex in these stories. Have you had any?
Yes, yes. Yeah, my sex scenes were probably not super accurate or even like anatomically possible, I'm sure. Some cases, like I was young, I didn't know, and But yeah, I mean, the thing I remember about Toni Morrison's classes though was she would read our work out loud. And I don't know if you've ever heard Toni Morrison reading, but she had the most just like operatic voice and such a command of her instrument that you would just be sitting there thinking, I am a genius. I am a genius. Listen to how incredible my short story is. And then you would leave class and walk around for a while and be like, oh yeah, I'm not actually a genius. It was just Toni Morrison reading my work. That was all.
I mean, that's a thrill in itself, Toni Morrison reading your work.
Yeah. Even if she's telling you it's crap. Yes.
So was there an adjustment for you to think of yourself as a working published author whose job was author and not hyphenate author?
So yeah, I mean, and it took me some time. Like, I did not quit my day job for a long time. I sold Good in Bed as part of a 2-book deal while I was still working at the Inquirer. And I worked at the paper for a year between selling the book and publishing the book. And then I took a year's sabbatical to write my second book, which became In Her Shoes. And at that point, it was 2001, 2002, and it was kind of clear that journalism was not the sort of robust profession that it had been like 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. Like the internet was happening and it was sort of eating newspapers' advertising revenue. It was, instead of classified ads, everyone was on Craigslist. And so I didn't want to let go of that job, though, until I was like pretty sure I was going to be able to support myself as a novelist. And so I didn't quit my newspaper job until I had published 2 books and was under contract for 2 more books. So
Okay.
I was pretty careful. Yeah.
That is pretty careful. So being an established writer, you're expected to have a new book about every 18 months?
Every year, 2 years, something like that. Yeah. They let you take time off every once in a while. Time off for good behavior, I call it.
Is that a scary pace now, or you feel like, oh, I can do that?
Luckily, I have a lot of ideas and I really love writing. I'm not one of these writers who are like sitting down and feeling like they're opening a vein or like it's agony or like the words have to be like pulled out of them like you're extracting a stubborn molar. I really like writing and I've been really fortunate, I think, in terms of like always having the next idea. And I really credit newspapers for that.
How so?
The pace more than
pace.
anything else. So like when I was starting, I was a general assignment reporter and I was usually writing like at least a story a day, covering a school board meeting or a sewage board hearing, or there was some kind of accident or some kind of something. So you're like writing off the news and then you're probably working on some longer feature piece that doesn't have as immediate a time element to it. You're always writing and you're always looking for ideas and looking for your next story. And I think that got me good at sort of managing my time and just training myself to sort of when you're sitting in front of the computer, it's time to work.
That's a very good thing to be able to do, actually.
Yeah. Yes, I have tried to instill that in my children. I do not know how successful I've been, but I've done my best.
Okay, so I'm really interested in your process. So for your latest book, The Griffin Sisters Greatest Hits, I heard that it all started in Alaska, which I found such an unlikely place to start.
So yeah, my husband and I went to Alaska on vacation and we did all of the hiking and the kayaking and the glacial lagoons and the sightseeing. And I also did a lot of listening, which is what I say when I'm being polite, or eavesdropping, which is what I say when I'm being honest. And listening to all of the people in Alaska who seem to have had previous versions of themselves that they had left behind, and they'd sort of come to Alaska and reinvented themselves for whatever reason. And that's where the character Cassie came to me. We were staying in Airbnbs, And the way the Airbnbs worked is like you never ever saw the people who ran them, who maybe they were living on the property, maybe they were not, but they would text you a code and you'd unlock the door and you'd never ever see them. And I just started imagining this woman who had run away from her life and was living in Alaska and managing Airbnbs. And I could see her kind of trudging around in this like oversized parka, carrying a bucket of cleaning supplies. And once I kind of had her image, I had to figure out, okay, what happened to this person? What is she running from? How'd she end up here? What did she do? Who did she hurt? Who hurt her? And how is she going to make her way back into something that's a little happier than where she is now? And that's where the book got started.
That is so fascinating because it's her living in Alaska is certainly not the central part of the story. And yet it's so interesting to me that that was the basis and all the other stuff came from the questions you would ask. How do you describe what the book is about?
So it's a story about sisters, and it's a story about fame and music, pop culture. It's a story about women's bodies and beauty and diet culture and shame and all of the things that those of us who were young women in the 90s and the early aughts remember going through, where, you know, this idea that you could be tremendously talented, you could have the most beautiful voice in the world, you could be the most gifted songwriter, but if you didn't look a certain way, or even if you did look a certain way, you know, the world was still going to have something to say about your body, your face, your hair, your whatever it was. I wanted to talk about that. I think that's sort of one of the great fascinations of my career is women's bodies and what the world has to say about them, and how any woman can sort of just like make peace with living in a body.
And then you have, I mean, there's so much there, but you have the sisters' relationship with each other. And then you have this sister who fits more into that mold of what people are looking for.
Yes, exactly.
What's considered the right way to be.
Yeah. So there's Cassie, who is the sister who runs off to Alaska, who is plus size. And she's very much a little bit of an echo of Carnie Wilson, who, if you remember those Wilson Phillips videos.
Absolutely. On the beach.
On the beach, where everyone is in a slip dress except poor Carnie, who is in a black pantsuit, you know, exactly what you would wear to the beach, right? And I just remember thinking, like, I would have been so struck by this video, even if I personally had not owned that same pantsuit, which I did. I swear to God, I had that pantsuit. So, you know, here's this woman who, like, obviously she's so talented. Obviously she can sing. Obviously she's like part of this great rock and roll legacy. And all her record label wants to do in these videos is hide her behind boulders and grand pianos, or like show like this snippet of her face from like her chin up and her forehead down for just like a fraction of a second before they go back and show the thin sister and the thin cousin. And I wanted to talk about that. And I wanted to talk about like Jessica Simpson, who like was basically doing like boot camp training to play Daisy Duke in the Dukes of Hazzard movie, and then gained a couple pounds when she stopped doing that and showed up on stage in these like high-waisted jeans with a leopard print belt, and everyone lost their minds because she did not look like Daisy Duke anymore. And people felt like they were owed the Daisy Duke body, and they were angry that she wasn't giving it to them anymore. I remember that so vividly. I remember all of the attention that Britney got when she shaved her head, and, you know, how none of us realized, I don't think, like what she was going through until her memoir came out. And we were just like, oh my God. So like that was what went down with you and Justin, and like that was what was happening with you and your dad. All of these young women that just got so chewed up and spit out by pop culture, by the tabloids, by all of the negative attention they received, and having to go back and revisit all of that, and also sort of acknowledge my own complicity, because like I was reading every tabloid story about Britney that I could get my hands on, because all of us were like, I
Right.
was obsessed. And
That was what was selling. News
that was,
about Britney.
of course, I mean, because what do we love more than somebody who's at the absolute top and then falls? Like, those are the stories that I think we are, as human beings in some ways, like we are hardwired to consume them. Everybody wants to see the person on top sort of take a tumble, and then everybody wants to see them have a comeback and maybe fall down again, but there was something so specifically vicious about the way it attached to women's bodies at the time, and like the scrutiny and the shaming that like somebody like Britney, who was like a perfectly normal sized person, but if she like ate a big lunch, the tabloids were reporting it. Is she pregnant? Is she getting fat? We don't know which is worse. And yeah, it was a mess. It was bad.
And the disparity about men's bodies and the lack of focus on that. And
Yes.
It was interesting to me reading Griffin Sisters about, I don't know, it can't be just me who was saying to yourself, wow, which of these sisters would I rather be?
I mean, honestly, it's like there are pros and cons to each one. Like, so there's Cassie, who's plus size, who is tremendously talented, but really does not want to be famous, really is not comfortable in the spotlight, and the record label only wants to hide her while exploiting her talents. And then there's Zoe, who is beautiful and thin and pretty and fits the mold and wants nothing more than to be famous, to be in the spotlight, to have all that attention, to like be on the cover of People magazine and have her wedding covered on Entertainment Tonight. But she is not all that talented, and she understands that like what she brings to the band, which is her ability to like look really cute in a mini skirt and like bang her tambourine, like she can be replaced, and she knows that, and I think feels that very deeply. So, I mean, I think that both of these women are suffering, and I think I wanted readers asking themselves, like, which suffering would I prefer? Who's got it worse?
I think Zoe had it worse.
Yeah.
Cassie had that talent. That was innate. Nobody was going to take that away from her. Zoe didn't, and that made her very vulnerable. Not that Cassie wasn't, but...
Yep. And I think like some of the things that she did to kind of secure her place in the band, I mean, those were some hard bargains that she struck. And I think that she ended up commodifying herself, like treating her own body and her own beauty like they were currency. But what choice did she have, really? I wanted people thinking about that, and then also sort of thinking about, okay, it's 20 years later, or it's 25 years later. Has anything gotten any better, or are we just as awful to these young women who just are talented and want to be entertainers?
So I've heard you talk about that recently, and it seemed like there was a period, not in the not very distant past, of maybe a change there, maybe a change towards a lot of things, body image and aging and all of that. And I've also heard you talk about, nope, that's gone. No.
I think that we had a moment where we had Lizzo and we had other stars who were starting to maybe look a little different. And there was this idea that we can embrace a broader spectrum of bodies and a broader spectrum of beauty. And it doesn't all have to look like Sydney Sweeney or whoever it is. And then Ozempic happened, and suddenly it was like, oh no, like body acceptance, body positivity, who's she? And now the pendulum has swung all the way back over, and it's very depressing. And I, especially as the mother of like, I have a teenage daughter and a 22-year-old daughter, and boy, did I wish that the world they were living in was a little kinder and a little more accepting. And what I tell myself is that progress is not linear. It's always one step forward, two steps back. And I'm hoping that we are moving forward. We are getting better. It's just slow. It's just a slow, arduous, difficult process. I've been watching Lena Dunham's new show and also watching Lena Dunham sort of do press for the new show. And Lena Dunham is larger than she was when she was making Girls, and people are not happy about that. Like, again, it's like people are acting like she betrayed them. And meanwhile, she's had a number of like serious health challenges, and she's had a hysterectomy. Like, she's gone through all this stuff. Like, her body it's more than just like something that should or should not be a certain size. But boy, everyone's got something to say, and everyone feels pretty comfortable saying it from what I can tell from like the comments.
There was this pact that she broke.
Exactly. Like it's if you're big, you must be always trying to get smaller. If you just had a baby, you must be trying to bounce back. Like, that's where you're devoting your energy. If you're big, you can be the funny best friend, but you can't be the romantic lead. All of these rules and all of these restrictions. And I've always tried to tell stories where there are women of different shapes and different sizes, sort of insisting that they too can be main characters. They can have main character energy, even if they're not a size 2. I think if I've got a part to play in this, that's it.
And you put them on the cover of your books.
I tried. Okay, so I don't have a lot of control over the cover.
Really?
And I have very little. And there was a period of time in the aughts where I was writing plus-size protagonists, and I was getting covers with skinny women. And I would be like, what is going on here? And I would always try to like push the art director. Like, I had one book cover where this was when we were showing parts of women's faces, not to be confused with the era when we were showing parts of women's bodies, not to be confused with the era where we were only showing women from the back. So it was a woman's face with like, she was holding her arm up in front of her face. And I'm like, can we please make her arm just like a little bit bigger? So like I spent 2 weeks going back and forth with the art department, trying to like digitally fatten this woman's arm and thinking like, this is not what I went to college for, you guys.
You won out though.
Sorta. It took time. It took time, but like eventually, yes, I finally got some like women on the covers who looked like the women on the page.
So when it comes to the business of being a successful writer, what is your advice?
I'm a big don't quit your day job person. I think that there's only ever been like a very small percentage of writers who can make their living just as writers. And a lot of them, people have jobs teaching, or they're English professors, or they're copywriters, or they're writing PR or something like that. I'm big on don't quit your day job, like until you are like 200% sure that you're actually going to be able to support yourself doing writing. I'm big on finding a job that pays you to write. And for me, it was journalism. I think that there are other jobs that you can go be like a social media manager for Steakums or something and do some really funny creative writing. Publishing your work is really important. So I tell people like join a writer's group or publish your stuff online or start a blog or start a Substack or start a Tumblr. I think the kids are still doing Tumblr. But, get your work out there and get comfortable with critique and, revision and the idea that like you can make things better. And it's art, but it's also craft, and like discipline's really important. Like I'm really big on like writing, not every day, like you can take the weekends off if you want to, but like just for part of most days of the week, just like sitting down, turning off your phone and just doing your writing.
Excellent. Okay, well, so you're in the unique position of having one of your books made into a movie, In Her Shoes. which was a movie starring Cameron Diaz and Toni Collette and Shirley MacLaine. What was your experience with that project?
It was really good. I know a lot of other writers who've had adaptations, and they seem to have to spend a lot of time being like, well, they changed the ending, or they changed the characters, or they made everybody, like I wrote Jewish characters and they turned them all into Catholics or something like that.
Which is such a totally different thing.
Totally different, completely different. Yeah. So I'm really lucky. It was an excellent screenplay. It was a pretty faithful adaptation. The only thing was, again, like the big girl of it all. Like the character I'd written in the book was like a bigger girl. And when they cast Toni Collette, I was thrilled because her like breakout performance was this movie called Muriel's Wedding, where she'd gained weight for the part. And I'm like, oh, she'll just do that again. And I was getting updates from the set and they're like, okay, she's gained 5 pounds. And I'm like, okay, that's a good start. And then they're like, she's gained 7 pounds. And I'm like, you realize for some of us, that's just a good weekend. And then they're like, okay, she's gained 12 pounds, but we think she's hit a wall. And I'm like, there's a wall? This is news to me. But I wish that I wish the actress playing Rose had been more the size of the Rose that I'd written. But I also understand that there are limitations when you're talking about real people in real bodies, asking them to gain weight and lose weight. So that I was a little sad about. But other than that, I was really, really pleased. And that's another piece of advice I have. Like when people are getting their stuff optioned or whatever, I'm just like, listen, the story that you told is done. It's on the page. It's in the book. No one is going to change a word of that. Let the movie be their story to tell. Like, let it be the screenwriter, the director, the actors. Like, you just go on and write your next book. Because in most cases, the writer doesn't have a lot of control over what happens with the movie. I mean, unless you're like Stephen King, they don't give you casting approval. They don't give you script approval. You just got to sort of hope for the best. And so I tell people, hope for the best and just go write your next book.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of the things you focus on a lot is women's relationships, sisters, mothers, daughters. How much of that comes from your own life?
I mean, I definitely used my own experiences as material, but I also think that there are universals to mother-daughter relationships, to sister relationships. So some of it's true life. Some of it's stories I hear from friends. Some of it's just like paying attention in the world. But I think there's such a richness and such a depth to those stories and just endless stories you can tell.
So, okay, you're a mom. You have 2 daughters, Phoebe and Lucy. I have a Lucy too. So I know you're sort of supporting their ambitions. One is interested in Broadway, right? One is interested in music. Do they seem fearless to you relative to where you were at their age?
They do.
Why is that? How did that get to be?
I would like to take credit. I really, really would. I hope that some of it is me, like hyping them up and sort of really making an effort not to speak badly about myself or about other women's bodies where they could hear me. I think some of it is just innate, though. I think Phoebe especially is just like, she's my younger one. And I think she was just like born, like I watched her walk out the door one day and she's got on like this oversized like concert t-shirt, like Bikini Kill, and this like granny skirt that she's thrifted, which is like brown with pink flowers on it. And she's wearing her Doc Martens and it's, she's got like curly hair and it's this whole look. And she stops in front of the mirror. She's walking out the door and she like gives herself this little nod. She's like, I look good. And then walks out the door. And I'm like, I don't think in my entire life I ever looked at myself in a mirror and said I looked good. Certainly not at that age. So like I mean, I really do think they are brave and fearless and going to change the world. And it's one of the things that gives me hope for the future.
That's good. Hope for the future is a very, very good thing.
Yes. Yeah.
One thing I wondered about, okay, so their ages and your career as a writer seem to overlap about 100%. How did it work when you were working on your novels and you're raising these two girls, and part of the time you're married, part of the time not? How did that work?
I had a lot of help. I mean, honestly, like that's the other thing. I had sitters, I had a nanny, I had my mom helping a lot, I had my mother-in-law helping a lot. And I took all the help that people could give me, because when kids are little, like it can be really hard to find time to write. And so I would take my laptop, I would go to a coffee shop, sit for a couple of hours, just type, and then come home and be a mom. I had a housekeeper, like any task I could pay to outsource, I did. I had a great assistant for like 20 years who was like my second brain. And honestly, that's the only thing I can say about being a mother and having a creative job is like, because it doesn't look like work sometimes. Like I remember there would be like snow days or like school cancellations, and like all the other moms in the neighborhood would be like, can my kid come to your house because you're home all day?
You're home, right.
And it doesn't read as work the same way like being a doctor does or being a lawyer does or whatever, but it's a job and you've got to treat it like a job, even and especially if nobody else is, because it doesn't look like work sometimes. It looks like you're sitting there reading a book or sitting there typing an email or something. And really, you're writing a novel or you're researching a novel. So you've got to be like really, really protective of your time. And I hope that my kids will remember me being present and around and supportive of them and showing up at the school concerts and the soccer games and the school plays and the parent-teacher conferences. Because like I really did make an effort to do all of those things. But I think that when you have a parent who's a writer, you're always sort of sharing them with imaginary people and an imaginary world. And I hope my kids won't resent that. I do.
I would assume they're very proud of you. I would think.
I mean, they're teenagers.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. All right. I hope that's different for you than it was for me. Okay. So can you tell us what you're working on next?
Yes. I'm working on the story of two writers and a long marriage that looks like it is ending when we start the book. And one of the people in this marriage, like they're separated, and the male writer has sort of taken up with this very famous and famously beautiful woman. And you start the book when you're in his ex-wife's head as she's waking up to the news that he's got this new girlfriend and this is who it is, this famous person. So it's about writing, it's about marriage, it's about fame and beauty and the way the world values women's work versus men's work and all the things. The working title is True Story, but I don't know if that's going to be the title in the end. I like it maybe more than my editor does.
Do you know how it's going to end? You don't need to tell us, but I'm just curious in your process.
Yeah. There are writers before they start. They have to know how it's going to end. Generally, I know how I want it to feel when it ends. And what that looks like specifically can change as I go through the drafts. But with this book, I knew really early on, here's the ending.
So sometimes you don't know. You know the feeling. That's interesting. But you don't know how you get there.
I mean, yeah, I would say like I know generally, but not specifically, I would say.
And was that the way it was for the Griffin sisters?
Yeah, I mean, I had the shape of the story and the shape of the ending. I played around with some different things before I like got to where it ended up being. But yeah, I knew sort of how I wanted it to feel.
Okay, so Jennifer, it's time for a lightning round. And so we have some fun questions for you, a few would you rather.
I'm ready.
Okay, all I ask, just first answer pops into your head. Okay, here we go. Which would you rather, Kindle, hardback, or paperback?
Kindle.
Okay, what are you reading now?
The Girls Who Grew Big by Layla Motley.
Okay, would you rather be backstage at a concert or on stage at a concert?
Backstage.
Any particular artist?
Oh boy, I used to dream about being Tina Turner's like backup singer, but yeah, for my own sake and the audience's, I think I should stay backstage.
Okay, Tina. Okay, which one of your character's jobs would you most like to try?
Wow. That is a good question. I mean, honestly, I would like to be a singer. I would like to have Cassie's talent, though. So that would be my answer.
Okay, so you live in Philadelphia. I'm a WNBA fan, so I had to just slip this one in there. You're getting a
Yes.
team in 2030.
Yes.
They are unnamed. What should the name be?
The Bells. We have the Liberty already.
Yes.
So I would call them the Liberty Bells, but maybe just the Bells.
Okay. What have you changed your mind about in the last year?
Huh. Salmon. I never used to like salmon.
I
And
get
then
that
my
answer every single time.
Salmon. My husband found this recipe and now I love salmon. It's
And
amazing.
you never liked it before this.
I hated it. It smelled fishy and it made the whole house smell fishy.
Okay. That is a
Mhm.
good answer. What is your superpower?
I can parallel park a minivan.
Wow.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
Well, now do you feel like it's cheating? Some cars can park themselves?
Yes, I do. And so Phoebe's learning to drive right now, and we bought a new car because we wanted one with all of the safety features and the driver's side airbags and everything. And I actually, for a moment, considered like one of the like you press a button and it parks itself, and then I'm just like, no, that's gonna make them weak.
Exactly. We're going old school. You're going to park this
Yeah.
yourself.
Exactly.
Okay. What was your favorite book as a kid?
Oh God, I had so many. I loved Little Women.
Okay. Score one for Ms. Alcott. Okay. What is the best cheese option for a Philly cheesesteak? Provolone, Cheese Whiz, or American?
Cheese Whiz.
Cheese
Gotta
Whiz.
go Whiz.
Okay. Would you rather be at an Eagles Super Bowl game or a Princeton class reunion?
Can I just stay home?
You stay home.
Thank
Neither.
you.
You don't want to go to either. Okay.
No. Stay home.
Okay. The last one. This is a two-part question. What is the best investment you've ever made and the worst? But investment could be anything. It could be time you spent a class. It could be anything. It could be an investment.
Ah, boy. That is a really good question. I know I have made good investments. You know what? I'm going to say my college degree, my English degree. Which,
Okay.
everybody's like, English, what are you going to do with that? But it was, for me, it was a great investment.
Okay. And the worst?
The worst investment. I bought a Valentino handbag that I think I ended up carrying like twice because it was so expensive. I was afraid to actually use it. And then it just like sat in my closet untouched for years. And then I sold it on the Real.
Okay. Good for you. I would love to say I bought a Valentino handbag that had only been used twice, but I can't. Okay. Jennifer, thank you so much for spending the time. I really love talking to you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for taking time to listen to our conversation on How She Does It. Wishing you all a week filled with music, friends, and great plot twists. We'll have another great conversation for you soon. Until then, onward.